I watched my cousin Vanessa's perfectly manicured finger point directly at my chest, her voice shrill enough to crack the crystal chandelier hanging above us. "She stole it. Grandpa's diamond ring is missing, and Iris was the only one alone with him before he died." The words hit me like a physical blow. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me in that oak-paneled conference room, and I felt my throat tighten. The lawyer, Mr. Pemberton, froze mid-sentence, his hand still hovering over the sealed envelope containing Grandpa's will. My Aunt Linda gasped dramatically, clutching her pearls like she was auditioning for a soap opera. Uncle Raymond's face twisted into something ugly and satisfied. "That's a serious accusation," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Serious? Serious." Vanessa's voice climbed higher. "My grandmother's engagement ring has been in this family for 4 generations, and now it's gone. You were there, Iris. You were always there, hovering around him like a vulture. I'll tell you what happened in that conference room. But first, be honest, if you've been accused of stealing, would you have fought back, or stayed quiet? If you enjoy stories where the truth finally comes out, subscribe, because this one gets worse." The room erupted. Aunt Linda started crying on cue, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. My cousin Derek crossed his arms and glared at me with pure contempt. Uncle Raymond stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that made my teeth ache. "I always knew she was after his money," Raymond said, his voice carrying that pompous tone he'd perfected over years of talking down to people. "Arthur was getting old, vulnerable. She took advantage of him." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip that massive mahogany table and watch all their shocked faces as papers flew everywhere. Instead, I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. And I smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small knowing curve of my lips that made Vanessa's eyes narrow with suspicion. Because they had no idea what was coming. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been sitting in Grandpa Arthur's hospital room, holding his weathered hand as machines beeped steadily around us. He was dying, we all knew it, but he was still sharp as ever. His blue eyes, faded but fierce, locked onto mine. "Iris, honey, I need to tell you something," he'd said, his voice raspy but urgent. "I've been watching them. All of them. Grandpa, you should rest." "No." His grip on my hand tightened with surprising strength. "Listen to me. I installed cameras. All over the house. In my study, the living room, even in my bedroom closet where I kept the important documents." I'd blinked at him, confused. "Cameras? Why?" His laugh turned into a cough, and I quickly lifted a cup of water to his lips. When he could speak again, his expression was grim. "Because I'm not blind, sweetheart. I see how they look at each other when they think I'm sleeping. I hear them whispering about my will, about what they'll get when I'm gone. Your Aunt Linda tried to sweet-talk me into changing beneficiaries last month. Raymond keeps asking about my investments." The bitterness in his voice made my chest ache. "Grandpa. They don't care about me, Iris. They care about my money. But you? You're the only one who visits because you actually want to see me. You're the only one who remembers how I take my coffee, who brings me those awful romance novels I pretend not to love." His eyes grew misty. "You're the only real family I have left." I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "I love you, Grandpa." "I know you do, honey. That's why I'm telling you about the cameras. The security company installed them 6 months ago. Everything's backed up to a cloud server. The password is in my study, in the blue notebook in the 3rd drawer of my desk. If anything happens, if they try anything, you'll have proof." "Try anything? What do you mean?" But he was getting tired, his eyelids drooping. "Just remember, Iris. 3rd drawer. Blue notebook. Don't let them take what's rightfully yours." He died 4 days later, surrounded by family members who hadn't visited him once during his hospital stay but showed up like vultures when the doctors said it was almost time. I was the one who held his hand as he took his last breath. I was the one who whispered that I loved him and that I'd make sure his wishes were honored. And I was the one who noticed Vanessa slipping into Grandpa's study during the wake, her eyes darting around nervously before she closed the door. I'd followed my instincts that day. While everyone else was in the living room, eating catered sandwiches and talking about funeral arrangements with fake sympathy in their voices, I'd gone to Grandpa's house. His actual house, not the hospital room where he'd spent his final weeks. I'd used my key, the one he'd given me years ago when I was in college and needed a quiet place to study. The house smelled like him. Old Spice and peppermint candies and leather from his reading chair. It made my throat tight, but I pushed through the grief and went straight to his study. Third drawer. Blue notebook. It was exactly where he said it would be, tucked beneath some old tax documents. The notebook was small, unremarkable, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. But inside, in Grandpa's careful handwriting, were passwords, account numbers, and a note that made my blood run cold. Iris, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I had to leave you alone with them. But you're not defenseless. Check the cameras. Watch what they do when they think no one's looking. And when the time is right, show them who you really are. I believe in you. Love always, Grandpa. My hands had been shaking as I opened my laptop and logged into the security system. The footage loaded slowly, thumbnail images appearing one by one. I clicked on the most recent files. What I saw made me physically ill. There was Raymond, 3 days before Grandpa died, standing in the study with a stack of papers. He was reading through them, muttering to himself, then pulling out his phone to take pictures. These stock certificates have to be worth at least $2 million, he said to someone on the phone. If we can get him to sign over power of attorney before he croaks, we can liquidate everything and split it before the will goes through probate. There was Aunt Linda, 2 weeks before Grandpa's death, sitting at his bedside in the hospital while he slept. She wasn't holding his hand or praying. She was going through his wallet, taking pictures of his credit cards and ID with her phone. I'll need these numbers for after, she whispered to herself. Can't let everything go to probate. Too much tax. There was Vanessa, just yesterday during the wake, in Grandpa's study. She was opening drawers, searching for something, her face tight with concentration. She found a small wooden box on the bookshelf and opened it. Inside was Grandma's engagement ring, a beautiful diamond surrounded by sapphires that had been in our family since 1952. Vanessa looked around, listened at the door, then slipped the ring into her purse. But she didn't leave it at that. She pulled out a different ring from her pocket, a cheap costume jewelry piece, and put it in the box. Then she closed everything up and left, a satisfied smile on her face. I'd watched that footage 3 times, my hands gripping the edge of Grandpa's desk so hard my knuckles went white. She'd stolen the ring and planted a fake. And I was willing to bet everything I had that she was planning to accuse me of the theft. The next few days were a blur of careful planning. I called the lawyer handling Grandpa's estate, Mr. Pemberton, and told him I needed to speak with him privately before the will reading. He'd been Grandpa's attorney for 30 years. And when I showed him the footage, his face went from professional neutrality to barely contained rage. This is fraud, he said, his voice tight. This is elder abuse. These people were manipulating a dying man. Can we use this? I asked. Is it legal? He nodded slowly. Your grandfather installed the cameras in his own home with a legal security company. The footage is his property, and as his executor, I have the right to review any evidence related to his estate. Yes, we can absolutely use this. I want to wait, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I want to see what they do at the will reading. I want to see how far they'll go. Mr. Pemberton had given me a long look, then nodded. I'll follow your lead. But Iris, be prepared. This is going to get ugly. He had no idea how right he was. Now, sitting in that conference room with Vanessa's finger still pointing at me like I was a criminal, I kept my expression neutral. Inside, though? Inside, I was burning with righteous fury. Those are serious accusations, Mr. Pemberton said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Miss Vanessa, do you have any proof of this theft? Vanessa's eyes gleamed. I checked Grandpa's jewelry box this morning. The ring is gone. And Iris was the last person alone with him. Everyone knows she was always at the hospital, always hovering around him. I was taking care of him, I said quietly. Someone had to. Oh please, Aunt Linda chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. We all know you were working an angle, dear. You probably figured if you played the devoted granddaughter, Arthur would leave you something substantial. Derek laughed, the sound sharp and mean. She's been playing us all. Poor little Iris, so devoted, so caring. Meanwhile, she's stealing family heirlooms and probably forged the will too. That's enough. Mr. Pemberton's voice cracked like a whip. These accusations are completely inappropriate and potentially libelous. Unless someone has actual evidence, I suggest we proceed with the reading of the will. Evidence. Raymond stood up, buttoning his suit jacket like he was about to give a presentation. The evidence is clear. The ring is missing. Iris had access. I move that we contest whatever this will says until a full investigation can be conducted. For all we know, she manipulated my father when he was vulnerable and confused. I felt something snap inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, clean break between the person I'd been and the person I was about to become. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a knife, I have evidence. Would you like to see it? The room went silent. Vanessa's finger slowly lowered. Raymond's confident expression faltered. Aunt Linda's fake tears dried up instantly. Mr. Pemberton cleared his throat. Miss Iris, would you like to present your evidence now? I pulled out my laptop, which I'd brought in my bag, and set it on the conference table. My hands were steady as I opened it and pulled up the security footage files. Grandpa Arthur was a smart man. Smarter than any of you gave him credit for. 6 months ago, he installed security cameras throughout his house. Everything was recorded and backed up to a secure server. Vanessa's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? I clicked on the first video file. This footage is from 3 days before Grandpa died. Uncle Raymond, would you like to explain what you're doing in this video? The laptop screen filled with footage of Raymond in Grandpa's study, and I turned it so everyone could see. Raymond's voice came through the speakers clearly. These stock certificates have to be worth at least $2 million. If we can get him to sign over power of attorney before he croaks, we can liquidate everything and split it before the will goes through probate. Raymond's face turned the color of a tomato. That's out of context. Is it? I clicked to the next video. This is Aunt Linda, 2 weeks before Grandpa died. In his hospital room. While he was sleeping. The footage showed exactly what I'd seen before. Aunt Linda going through his wallet, photographing his cards, whispering about avoiding probate taxes. Aunt Linda made a choking sound. I was trying to help organize his affairs. By stealing his credit card information? I asked, my voice still eerily calm. How helpful? I looked at Vanessa, and I let all the anger I'd been holding in show in my eyes. And now, my dear cousin, would you like to tell everyone what you did during Grandpa's wake? I didn't do anything. Vanessa's voice was shrill now, panicked. I clicked the final video. The conference room filled with the sound of drawers opening, and there was Vanessa on screen, finding the ring box, taking out Grandma's ring, replacing it with a fake, and slipping the real one into her purse. The silence that followed was deafening. I can explain. Vanessa stammered. Please do, I said. Explain to everyone how you stole a family heirloom, planted a fake, and then accused me of the theft in front of witnesses. I'm fascinated to hear the explanation. Derek was staring at his sister with his mouth open. Raymond had sat down heavily, his face ashen. Aunt Linda looked like she was about to be sick. Mr. Pemberton adjusted his glasses. I've seen enough. Miss Vanessa, I strongly suggest you return that ring immediately. As for the rest of you, these recordings clearly show attempted fraud and manipulation of a vulnerable elderly person. I'll be providing copies to the police and to the probate court. Wait, Raymond said, holding up his hands. Let's not be hasty here. We're family. We can work this out privately. Family. I stood up, and something in my demeanor made all of them flinch. You want to talk about family? I was the one who visited Grandpa every single day for the last 5 years. Not just when he was dying. Every day. I brought him groceries when his arthritis got too bad to shop. I drove him to doctor's appointments. I sat with him and watched his favorite shows and listened to his stories about Grandma, even though I'd heard them 100 times before. My voice was rising now, all the emotion I'd been holding back flooding out. You people showed up for birthdays and holidays when you needed money or wanted to make sure you were still in the will. You called him twice a year if he was lucky. And then when he was dying, you circled like vultures, trying to figure out how to steal from him before his body was even cold. Aunt Linda tried to interrupt. Iris, honey. Don't you dare honey me. I slammed my hand on the table, and everyone jumped. You made me feel like a criminal in front of everyone. You accused me of stealing from the man I loved most in this world. And all of it was a lie to cover up your own theft. Vanessa was crying now, real tears this time, mascara running down her face.
I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm sorry. I needed the money. I have debts and I thought. You thought you could steal from a dead man and blame me for it. I turned to Mr. Pemberton. Please continue with the reading of the will. Mr. Pemberton opened the sealed envelope with steady hands. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. He pulled out the documents and began to read. I, Arthur James Pemberton, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. He paused, looking around the room. To my son Raymond, I leave the sum of $10,000 and my collection of golf clubs, in the hope that he'll spend less time scheming and more time on honest recreation. Raymond's face went purple. $10,000. That was nothing compared to what he'd expected. To my daughter Linda, I leave my china cabinet and the sum of $10,000, with the hope that she'll remember that family is about more than inheritance. Aunt Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. To my grandchildren Derek and Vanessa, I leave $5,000 each and the reminder that integrity is worth more than any monetary inheritance. Vanessa let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. To my beloved granddaughter Iris, who has shown me more love and care in my final years than I deserved, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my house, all financial assets, investments, and personal property. She is to be the sole executor of my will and the primary beneficiary of my life insurance policy. The room exploded again, but this time I didn't care. Mr. Pemberton continued reading over the shouting. I do this not to punish my other family members, but to reward the one person who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. Iris, you made my last years joyful. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when I was tired. You're the granddaughter every old man dreams of having. Use this inheritance wisely, live well, and remember that you earned every penny of it through your kindness and love. I felt tears streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. Mr. Pemberton handed me a tissue and continued. And to anyone who might contest this will or question my granddaughter's character, I want you to know that I made these decisions with complete clarity of mind. I was evaluated by my physician, Dr. Marcus Stevens, just 3 weeks before my death, and he will testify to my mental competency. I installed security cameras throughout my home because I suspected some of you might try to manipulate me or steal from me after my death. The footage Iris has shown you today is exactly why I made the choices I made. I saw who you really were, and I made sure my granddaughter would be protected from your greed. The room was completely silent now. Even Raymond had stopped sputtering. Finally, I want to say this, I love you all, even knowing your faults. But love doesn't mean I was blind. I hope this will teach you that actions have consequences, and that integrity matters more than money. If you can learn that lesson, then perhaps my death will have served some purpose beyond your profit. Mr. Pemberton folded the papers and looked around the room. That concludes the reading of the will. Miss Vanessa, I expect the ring to be returned to Miss Iris within 24 hours, or I will be filing a police report. The rest of you are free to go. If anyone wishes to contest this will, be aware that all the security footage will be submitted to the probate court as evidence of your character and intentions. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Raymond stood up, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. This isn't over, Iris. We'll fight this. I met his eyes steadily. Go ahead. Fight it. I have recordings of you talking about liquidating Grandpa's assets before the will could be read. I have footage of all of you trying to steal from him. Do you really think a judge is going to side with you?" He stormed out without another word. Aunt Linda followed, dabbing at her eyes with that same handkerchief. Derek left quickly, unable to meet my gaze. Vanessa was the last to go, and she paused at the door. "I really am sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But you did let it go this far," I said. "You stole from our grandfather and tried to destroy my reputation to cover it up. Sorry doesn't fix that." She left, and then it was just me and Mr. Pemberton in that big conference room. "You handled that beautifully," he said, a slight smile on his usually stern face. "Your grandfather would have been proud." I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. I just wanted them to know the truth. I wanted them to see who they really were. "They saw it," Mr. Pemberton assured me. "Whether they acknowledge it or not, they saw it. Now, let's discuss the practicalities of your inheritance." The next few weeks were surreal. True to her word, Vanessa returned the ring, though she couldn't look at me when she handed it over. Raymond and Linda tried to contest the will, but their lawyer took one look at the security footage and advised them to drop it. They did, though not without sending me several nasty emails that I forwarded to Mr. Pemberton for documentation. I moved into Grandpa's house. My house now. Walking through those rooms, touching his things, seeing his reading glasses still on the side table where he'd left them before going to the hospital, it all made the loss feel fresh again. But it also felt right. This house had always been more home to me than my tiny apartment ever was. I found more of Grandpa's notes as I sorted through his things. Little messages he'd left for me, tucked in books and drawers. "Iris, remember to water the ferns on Tuesday. Don't forget to check the gutters before winter. There's a box in the attic with your grandmother's jewelry. It's yours now. She always said you had her eyes." Each note made me cry and smile at the same time. 3 months after the will reading, I was sitting on the porch of my house, drinking coffee and reading one of those awful romance novels Grandpa had pretended not to love. A car pulled up, and I was surprised to see Derek get out. He walked up the path slowly, his hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. "Hey, Iris." "Derek." I didn't put down my book. "What do you want?" I wanted to apologize. He sat on the porch steps, not quite looking at me. What we did, what Vanessa did, what all of them did, it was wrong. I didn't participate in the stealing or the planning, but I didn't stop them either. I believed them when they said you were manipulating Grandpa. I should have known better. I studied him for a long moment. Derek had always been the quietest of my cousins, the one who went along with whatever Vanessa decided. "Why are you really here?" He laughed, but it sounded sad. "Because I miss him. I miss Grandpa." And I realized that I wasted all those years not visiting him, not spending time with him, because I was busy or lazy or thought I had more time. And now he's gone, and I can't get that time back. That, at least, felt honest. "No, you can't. I know you probably hate all of us," he continued. "And you'd be right to. But I wanted you to know that some of us are learning from this. I've been thinking a lot about what Grandpa wrote in his will. About integrity and actions having consequences. I want to be better than I was." I set down my book. "That's a nice sentiment, Derek. But words are easy. It's the actions that matter." "I know." He stood up, brushing off his jeans. "I'm going back to school. I'm 30 years old and I've been drifting for years, taking money from my parents and working dead-end jobs. I want to actually do something with my life. Make something Grandpa could have been proud of." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. Really good. "And Vanessa's in therapy. She's dealing with a lot of stuff, gambling debts, shopping addiction, all the things that made her desperate enough to steal. She's not a bad person, Iris. She just made really terrible choices. She tried to ruin my life to cover up her terrible choices." "I know. I'm not making excuses for her. I'm just saying, she's trying to change. We all are." He started walking back to his car, then turned. "I found some old photos at Mom's house. Pictures of all of us when we were kids, at Grandpa's house. You were always the one organizing games, making sure everyone was included, trying to keep the peace. I'd forgotten that. I'd forgotten when we all actually liked each other. I felt a lump in my throat. That was a long time ago. Doesn't mean it can't happen again someday. He got in his car and drove away, leaving me alone with my coffee and my thoughts. I thought about what he'd said for a long time. About forgiveness and change and whether people really could become better versions of themselves. I didn't have answers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I did know one thing: I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what Grandpa had trusted me to do. I was honoring his memory by living well, by using the inheritance he'd left me to build a life that would have made him proud. I enrolled in a master's program for social work, specializing in elder care. If I could prevent even one family from going through what we went through, if I could help even one elderly person feel valued and loved in their final years, then maybe some good could come from all this pain. I kept the house exactly as Grandpa had left it, with his books on the shelves and his favorite chair in the corner and his coffee mug on the kitchen counter. Sometimes, when I was having a hard day, I'd sit in that chair and close my eyes and imagine I could still smell his Old Spice cologne. And every Sunday, I visited his grave with fresh flowers and one of those romance novels. I'd sit on the grass next to his headstone and read to him, just like I used to read to him in the hospital. "You were right, Grandpa," I told him one sunny afternoon, 6 months after the will reading. "You said I'd need to show them who I really was. But the thing is, I also needed to see who they really were. And who I really was. I'm stronger than I thought. Braver than I thought. And I'm done letting people treat me like I'm less than I am." The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear his voice. "That's my girl." I got a text that evening from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw it was from Vanessa. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect it. But I wanted you to know I paid off my debts, I'm sober, and I'm working at a non-profit helping women with addiction issues. I'm trying to be the person Grandpa hoped I could be. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I'm glad you're getting help. Keep going." I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say we could be friends again. But I acknowledged her effort, and sometimes, that's all we can do. A year after Grandpa's death, I hosted a small gathering at the house. Not a family reunion, I wasn't ready for that. But I invited Derek and a few of Grandpa's old friends and neighbors, the people who had actually cared about him when he was alive. We shared stories and laughed and cried and toasted his memory with his favorite whiskey. Derek pulled me aside at one point. "Thank you for this. For keeping his memory alive the right way." "He deserves to be remembered," I said simply. "So do you." Derek squeezed my shoulder. "You know, Grandpa used to talk about you all the time. He'd tell anyone who'd listen how smart you were, how kind, how you were going to change the world someday. I thought he was just being a proud grandfather. But he was right. You are changing the world. Maybe just one person at a time, but that still counts." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm just trying to live up to what he saw in me." "You already have." Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up, I found myself back in Grandpa's study. My study now. I sat at his desk and pulled out the blue notebook one more time, reading his final message to me. "Iris, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I had to leave you alone with them. But you're not defenseless. Check the cameras. Watch what they do when they think no one's looking. And when the time is right, show them who you really are. I believe in you. Love always, Grandpa." I ran my fingers over his handwriting, smiling through my tears. "I showed them, Grandpa. I showed them exactly who I am. And more importantly, they showed me who they were. You gave me that gift. You gave me the truth, and the strength to face it." I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer. But not before adding my own note on the last page. "For whoever comes after me, family isn't about blood or inheritance. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. It's about who loves you when you have nothing left to give but yourself. Remember that, and you'll never be lost. Iris." They called me a thief at my grandfather's will reading. They tried to destroy my reputation, steal my inheritance, and paint me as the villain in a story where I was the only one telling the truth. But I had something they didn't: proof, evidence, and the unshakable knowledge that I had earned every bit of love and trust my grandfather had given me. They thought calling me a thief would humiliate me, would turn me into a doormat they could walk over on their way to my grandfather's money. They were wrong. I wasn't the thief. I wasn't the villain. I was the granddaughter who loved her grandfather enough to honor his wishes, to expose the truth, and to fight for what was right. And in the end, that made all the difference.